have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
Kenobi!
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast, where we have an awesome treat for you guys today. So yesterday, October 15th, the latest Star Wars book, Mace Windu and the Glass Abyss, released publicly. We were very grateful to have our friends over at Random House World send us advanced copies of this book, so we read through it over the last couple weeks, and we are here to talk about all the ins and outs of this book with you guys. We thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was an awesome entry by Stephen Barnes, an old EU writer who made the return for this book specifically. And we are so excited to dive right in, to sit here and talk to you guys about a character study book that I didn't expect. It has a ton of twists and turns that are true revelations and true mysteries that I didn't think were going to be coming in a book like this. And so there's going to be a lot of richness to talk about. If you're a Mace Windu fan or a prequel fan, then this is absolutely the book for you. So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about all the ins and outs. We're going to do our review and our breakdown and all of that on this episode. So stick around with us to talk Mace Windu. And I say us because it's not just me, but also the Metagossan mycelium himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter, what a ride this book was. You know, I was able to listen to it, and you read the book. So I get a bit more produced nuance, I guess, with lightsabers swinging in the background, blaster shooting, and all that stuff. It brought a lot of flavor to the story and the setting. But man, how enthralling was this? Everything about this. All the characters were so cool. I can't wait to talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to dive right in because there's a lot of really rich stuff in this book to talk about. Stephen Barnes is the author. We've already mentioned that, and he was just a masterclass. I've never read a Stephen Barnes book before. He's a great author. I mean, the way he painted the picture of this society, some of the mysteries and the details that he added to this book were really impressive. I was a big fan of a lot of elements of this story. Yeah,
and it's, you know, we have to compare it to some of the other Star Wars books that have recently been written and reviewed, and this is a standout.
Yep.
A lot of the details that it goes into from Mace Windu's perspective totally caught me off guard, you know, because when it gets right down to it, what we know about Mace Windu, he's just a really minor character. This elucidates so much about so many different aspects about what not only is he capable of, but a Jedi of his caliber is capable of.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun to peel back the layers on this one and get the insights that we've never seen before.
Right. Absolutely. So the book opens up actually a week into the story, and you don't realize it yet because you're following around this stranger on this planet, Metagos, and he's entering this bar. We've seen it before, a seedy cantina in Star Wars, and you're getting a lot of tidbits already about this planet and its uniqueness. There are characters talking about the web, and the web is very mysterious, and we don't know what this means. That one character says his family feeds the web, and we learn slowly that this term, the web, is multifaceted, very multifaceted. There's a lot of ways that they use the term the web, and it becomes a central theme really early. And Barnes has already given us really great sentences and really good things to reflect on. So he's speaking to the character who we don't know yet. And as the character leaves the bar, there's the bartender Vin the line that Barnes writes says, "A spot of moisture remained on the bar, and the reptilian," that's Vin, "smeared it away with one scaly finger as if it had never glistened there at all." And what it's talking about here is that this guy that we know is just now coming into this planet and trying to make a name for himself, trying to get linked into the criminal underworld on this planet. And, you know, he stands up and walks away, and that reptilian smearing away it represents the fact that people come and go in this underworld life all the time, and specifically on this planet, that nobody's sticking around, that there's all kinds of death and destruction, and criminals roll in here and then they get killed in the next couple days anyways. And so it shows that drifter kind of mentality that already exists on this planet. It was just really good writing off in the very first chapter.
Right. Yeah. I can't really add anything to that.
So we learn at the end of the end of the chapter that the guy's looking for trouble, and he goes and fights a couple guards. That these guys work for Chulok, the Jedi killer, a really mysterious character for the first, 60, 70 pages of the book, and then you get a big reveal, and an awesome reveal.
Dude, this guy, he's a beyond... I could never conceptualize a villain like this.
Yeah, I agree.
It seems to me like the Star Wars universe is one of the only places he can exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't picture this guy in Star Trek, X-Men, or anything like that.
No, he's very unique, very Star Wars indeed. And so we then see that the guy who's fighting these bodyguards is Mace Windu. Big Mace Windu reveal. It's his book. It was a little bit telegraphed already. And so Mace Windu's on this planet for some unknown reason. Get to the next chapter, and it's flashback a week beforehand. We're at Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral.
Very sad.
Stephen Barnes kind of elucidates on Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral. He actually gets to write the eulogy that Obi-Wan's delivering, which is pretty cool. That's something that you get to write.
And Mace Windu was confused that why would he have it on Theed on the boo? It's like, this is weird. It wasn't in his character at all.
Right. That we have Mace kind of sitting there drifting, thinking about a few things during the funeral, but one of the things that stuck out to me is Mace Windu sitting there thinking about how if the Jedi ran the Senate, what a disaster it would be. And I don't think he ever changed his mind on that, despite what Palpatine, the lie that he painted, specifically the Jedi, and that Mace was taking over. And so I really appreciate that. There's a lot of this is a big character study book for Mace Windu. We've talked about this so many times. I think every time we review a book that's not a High Republic book, we talk about how most of the books that Disney Star Wars puts out are character study books. They're one-off stories that give us a really deep look at a certain Star Wars character. And this one is no different. This one is one of the best of the bunch. So we get a Vapad mentioned super early. This is Mace Windu's own unique lightsaber fighting style. I was super happy to get that
and
mentioned at the very beginning.
His different lightsabers he has in the cabinet from over the years.
Yeah, exactly. We also learned, this is just super funny to me, but I really, really liked it, actually. Mace Windu is apparently a galaxy-class athlete. One of the greatest human athletes in the galaxy, he says.
Without use of the Force.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, without the Force. And he entered a heptathlon and was going to win through it because he didn't want to win, but it was very impressive, and I can definitely see that. This book, I mean, it makes no illusions that Mace Windu is a total badass.
Yeah.
The whole book. This is a very good character study for Mace Windu because obviously we have this perception of Mace Windu as Star Wars fans of what we've seen in the prequels and maybe a little bit of the Clone Wars, but just this really hard-ass, rigid, almost drill sergeant-like Jedi Master who is still, monkish and quiet and introspective, but is very cold to everybody around him. And that's the Mace Windu we get in this story because that's true to Mace Windu's character, but we get a lot more humanity involved in that. And we kind of understand why Mace is that way, and we get a lot of unique things that you could only get in a Star Wars book about a character like this.
Yeah, and to build on your point, Mace Windu up until this book, and this is, he's just the warrior leader of the Jedi in a sense, and he's got all these cool, unique things. The purple lightsaber being the most standout, and so there's not much to him. What this book delivers is, the ultimate warrior.
Yes.
There's a level of intelligence here that you wouldn't ever expect, and we'll get into that.
There's the big theme throughout the book is, I think you're putting it really well, is noble warrior. I mean, he is on this planet alone, not sent by the Jedi Order, and he's seeing injustice, and it is how Mace Windu can figure out how to solve it.
Right.
And so it's a pretty consistent Jedi trope we've seen before, but just one guy dropped against the whole planet. Really cool stuff. So we learn Qui-Gon Jinn was apparently a Dajark shark. when he was alive.
Yeah.
He's amazing at Dejark. He beat Mace Windu black and blue all the time with it.
Which this is Dejark. I guess it'd be fair to describe that as Star Wars Texas Hold'em, pretty much.
No, it's hollow chess. It's
Hollow chess? Okay.
Yeah. That's it's specifically it's hollow chess, and so
is that what we see?
yeah,
Chewie
it's in the new
play?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. And so,
That game sounds fun.
Oh, yeah, it sounds awesome.
There's a small bit of these that made it sound like we need to make these miniatures and play it sometime.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's a lot to it. They really fleshed out Sabacc in the real world, and I think this is just begging to be the next thing that they really, really flesh out as a real world game. So we learn that Qui-Gon has asked Mace to perform a mission posthumously. Qui-Gon has a message for him, and apparently Qui-Gon can't go to the planet himself because he's dead, and so he needs his buddy Mace to go figure it out. And
the way it works is Qui-Gon was recovered from his injuries. He was hurt on this planet, and then got recalled to
go to Naboo.
To go to Naboo.
Yeah, this is a very recent issue that propped up for Qui-Gon. He would have gone himself after the Battle of Theed if he hadn't passed away, but he gave it on to Mace, and we learn later in the story for a very specific reason. And so the mission is to go to this planet Metagos and to meet a specific character whose name is Kinshan, and to learn more from there. This planet is totally torn by radiation. Nobody can live on the surface of this planet. Everybody lives underground. And this planet has some of the most unique flora and fauna, and the way this planet works and the way the geography is described, like any sci-fi planet I've ever heard of.
Yeah, the setting develops in this at the start of this chapter, but really throughout the whole book.
Yeah.
And it's one of the better settings I've ever heard of or seen.
Yeah.
Just in my own academic thoughts about if I were to write a story or something like this, Star Wars is why it's such an awesome setting for so many different media is because you can create planets like this that exist and are within, they don't, they can exist in your mind like in reality. That suspension of disbelief of something that's just absurd or something like Star Trek V wasn't any good because it was just so silly, right?
Right.
But this place is totally believable. All the writing that goes into creating this setting is over the top cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really is, because there's just again, this book is really revelatory. As you read it, it's just more and more and ever growing. Barnes creates an entire ecosystem and atmosphere and way this planet functions in a super unique way, and builds that just throughout the story with little bitty tidbits. I'm thoroughly impressed.
And like I said, all of it's plausible to a point to where you can tell Barnes did this homework on creating an ecosystem of like, what's the word? There's some sort of, it's a science term of that, hell, Qui-Gon used it in the talking to a symbiotic relationship, and he creates that in this, and just that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get into the details.
Yeah, we'll dig into it for sure. So Mace goes to Yoda for some advice on if he should take this mission. It's an extra Jedi Council mission. Like, the Council's not going to know about it. It's outside of the Order's purview. This planet is outside of the Republic.
In the Outer Rim.
Yeah. And so we get this little scene. But the thing that sticks out most is that Anakin is training in the same room here as a child. I mean, he's brand new at the temple, and he's getting really frustrated, and Mace is already like super wary of the kid. He's like, there's, I don't know if this was a good idea.
They had.
Yeah, I do too. So Mace gets to Metagos, he lands, and he sees this, for lack of a better descriptor, hellscape of a planet. I mean, there was just solar flares and solar radiation, and now there's radiation storms and sandstorms and destroyed buildings everywhere. And I mean, this planet was utterly destroyed on the surface. And that's where Mace lands.
Now, I think it says at some point 10% of the life was the only thing remaining.
Yes.
Billions dead.
And he runs into this droid that's cleaning, and it doesn't have a master, and it's just kind of showing you that, like, left behind kind of thing on this planet.
Right.
Like, it's a post-apocalyptic planet.
Right.
And the Barnes continues to build the world with just already introducing unique creatures.
Glass slugs.
Exactly. See-through slugs that they're blind and they're attracted by sound,
Right.
and they're coming after Mace Windu, and he has no idea what's going to happen when they get to him, but it's very clearly threatening. And so already it's just super cool stuff like that. But Mace descends to inside the planet where people actually live underground, and there is the whole thing takes place on New Zaxxas, which is a planet or a city that was built in the middle of a gigantic, and I cannot. This city is like the size, in my mind at least, of like New York. I mean, it's a city. It's a massive metropolis, and it was built inside of an underground geode that could hold a metropolis of that size.
Right.
And that is a fanciful and amazing thing to think about. Like that's just a concept I never would have come up with.
It has there's slums, there's a floating castle. It has a train that goes around the outside. It has trains that go to other cities and other geodes. Mm-hmm. It's beyond cool.
Yeah, well, and he describes the city. He keeps using the term Dejark board, and so you need to be familiar with the circular board on the Millennium Falcon, but that the city itself is 10 layers, like a Dejark board stacked on top of each other. Just really, really cool stuff. So he gets inside, and we learn that this planet's primary export is a spider worm silk that is insanely durable. Just like if you could scale up real spider silk to building level material, you'd be able to build insanely strong bridges and skyscrapers. Well, it's this concept, but spiders are big enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, and this is kind of the MacGuffin of the whole story, in a sense. Like, there's all these uses for it that are secret, that do all these different things. These chapters, I think, set up the tone of some of the grubs that produce the silk are missing.
Yes, exactly. So we learned that this planet has a lot going on as far as we said, an ecosystem, but also on the species that are living there, the beings that occupy this planet. There's a lot of dynamics here.
At least 2 different kinds of insectoids. Like, you really have to use your imagination. Like, because you have the insectoids that operate the silk grow operation,
mm-hmm.
and then I forget the name. What's the mother and all her children? We're probably jumping ahead.
Hallians.
Yeah.
Hallians. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good enough time to describe the players here, because that'll be important. We don't want to describe them as the book introduces them, because they're all over the place. The groups that occupy this planet are, very first, those Hallians, which are spider silkworms. And I mean, when they're describing these worms, they're anywhere from like the size of your dog to the size of a horse.
Right.
They're big. They are big creatures. And so they're the ones that produce the silk. Then you have the psyllid, which is the other insectoid species. Everybody assumes that they are somehow genetically related to the spider silkworms, but at one point it diverged. The author does it best as he describes the spider silkworms as insect-like and the psyllids as more crustacean-like.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
like the best way for you in your head to be able to differentiate them. And then there's the native Metagossans, the people from the above ground. They're basically Trandoshans. I mean, they're not, but they're reptile people. They're Gorn. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Insert lizard man, and that is what they are.
Yeah, they even speak in the audiobook. Any S word the syllable is drawn out. So, Carter, I saw you at the store today.
Exactly.
I don't know how it was in the book.
Exactly the same. Yeah, like 4 S's.
So, in my mind, when I saw him, they're snake people.
Yeah. And so,
very cool to think of. Yeah.
Very cool. Along with the Metagossans, there's basically just, like on every Star Wars planet, all other kinds of humanoids thrown in there.
Yeah.
Like there's humans and Rhodians and yada, 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 just living there. And so the Metagossans and the humans were the surface dwellers. The Siblins lived underground already and committed crime. They're a criminal syndicate. And then the worm people lived there. And then there's the Sa'ad. How was this pronounced in the book?
Yeah, just like
Sa'ad. Okay, yeah, because it's S-A''AD. So there are the Sa'ad, and they are, I never, ever could actually figure out what they are, like what they look like. But they're another humanoid species that has a symbiotic relationship with the silkworms, and they are the only people up until this point who are able to coax the worms into producing the silk to sell.
Right.
And so those are the players involved. But now the big issue is that there's a new criminal syndicate on underground. All of the surface dwellers have been driven underground. As they were driven underground, they were in a panic. Their world is being destroyed. It's like a volcano
50
erupted.
years prior to these events.
Exactly. And so just imagine Pompeii is erupting. You got to get away. Away is underground, and you can't take anything with you, and there are already people that live underground that are established, and they're all criminals. Yep. So now you immediately work for those people because they are offering you safe harbor, and that is in exchange for your life, basically.
Yep.
You're not enslaved, but you might as well be on this planet. And so all the surface dwellers are driven underground. The siblings are there, and then there's a new criminal syndicate that's been formed, led by a guy named Chulok. Crazy cool character. We mentioned him already. We're going to get to him again. And they have like an uneasy alliance. So there's a gang war going on. There's all this refugee strife. And then there's the native population of worms. And the Sa'ad are basically native now. They've been here for thousands of years already. And they lived underground. When it was just the criminals, it wasn't that big of a deal because the geode was big enough for the two of them. But now it's a problem because there's just so many people around. Right. And they all live on different layers of the city. The top 3 layers are radiation. The radiation can still get to them. They're still threatened by radiation, but it's also the most affluent places because there's a material on this planet that can stop radiation. Then there's the middle 4 layers that are just safe to inhabit for average people, but they are also the ones ran by the criminal syndicates. And then there's the bottom 3 layers, which are where prisoners go to work and where the Sa'ad live to coax the silk out of the worms. And so that's kind of the rough rundown. Well, Mace Windu gets his planet and has to navigate all of these things. The 2 crime syndicates hate each other, but they also have an uneasy alliance. People can work for both of them, kind of in an unacknowledged way of if you get caught working for them, the other side will kill you, but they will just accept that you did jobs for them. And that is where Mace Windu begins to find his end, is he starts to portray himself as like a mercenary, but a jack-of-all-trades mercenary. He calls himself the Solver throughout the book.
And
nobody knows
cool
his name. Yeah, and he just solves problems. As much as you would imagine a Jedi could solve pretty much any problem, Mace Windu goes and does that. So Mace is introduced to Kinshan, the leader of the Sa'ad, and she describes the problem to him, that the gangs have started stealing the spider silk eggs and are making the spiders produce their silk through duress. And this is going to cut the Sa'ad completely out of the process, and then the spider silkworms are going to be enslaved. Whereas the Sa'ad have a benevolent relationship with the silkworms, and so Mace has to stop that, and he's going to do that by infiltrating both the crime syndicates. So,
and Qui-Gon's mandate was to basically bring justice to the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Qui-Gon's request, I should say.
Yeah, was to stop this planet from being controlled by the criminals.
Controlled by the criminals, exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm. So we then get introduced to the character of Chulok, who up to this point has been referred to as they. And you see why it's referred to as they, and that's because it is 2 beings who have been fused together at the shoulders and
by a fleshy bridge.
Exactly. He keeps using that term, fleshy bridge. And so it's a little hard to imagine for a minute, but it's like if you're standing next to somebody and there's a broomstick taped to both of your shoulders, and then that's just where you're attached.
See, in my mind, they were stacked.
Stacked on top of each other.
That's what I thought.
Okay, well, maybe not. The reason I'm saying, look, 1, I have aphantasia, so I can't imagine things like that. Like, I can't picture things in my mind, and so I don't know that for sure. But the only reason I thought that was because they talk about the big throne.
Yeah, it could be.
The throne that 2 of them could sit on at the same time. But anyways, they're attached at the shoulders. And so, to me, it doesn't seem like that would be good. But the book makes it out to, like 4 arms, 4 legs. All of this is better.
Double the strength.
Exactly. I don't know how that's possible.
Double the thinking power or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But these guys are not just 2 people who got joined together. They're like in sync. They speak in sync. They think in sync. one side is referred to as Chew, and the other one is referred to as Locke.
And Chew is a Rhodian. What is Locke?
I think Locke's the Rhodian.
Is it?
I don't know. One of them is a Rhodian. The other one is is the species that was created for this book to allow for them to be fused in the first place.
In the audiobook, it was two voices synced over each other. Every time they spoke.
Wow. That's
It was
super cool.
Off the hook cool.
Yeah,
So
that's
they-
really, really neat.
And so this character also is hyper charismatic.
Yes.
And it listening to the audiobook, that two voices dubbed over each other, like there's later points where Mace is interacting with him, and it's just so distracting. It's this character's ploy to throw people off.
Yeah, and to lull them in a sense of security.
Yeah.
So we learn that Chulok is referred to as the Jedi Killer because he thinks he killed Qui-Gon Jinn.
Right.
We get a flashback to Qui-Gon's time on the planet, and we learned that the Sa'ad saved Qui-Gon, who had fallen after he had gotten, kicked off of a ledge, and he was badly hurt, but he didn't die, and that this Chulok guy just claimed that he killed him for the street cred. And so, also, he wears Zillo Beast armor.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
Yeah, Zillo Beast armor, and his stick is made of Zillo Beast hide too.
Yeah.
And so it makes it impervious to Jedi lightsaber strikes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a cool concept.
So Mace parlays with this Chulok guy, and he tells him, you got to go out and kill a sibling for me to, even talk to you. And so Mace is just hanging out and doesn't go to the sibling into killing him or into trying to kill him, but basically the sibling is caught cheating at poker. Mace reveals it at Sabak. Mace reveals it, and then the guy's like, well, now I got to kill this guy, and Mace kills him first. And
no, the guy the sibling kills himself by accident.
Sure. Mace disables the guy and points his gun at his head, and then the sibling pulls the trigger. Mace is pretty cool about this guy dying, and that's a theme throughout this book. Not in an uncaring way, but in a shitty choices lead to shitty results kind of thing, where this guy chose to draw his gun on someone who's going to be able to kill him, and then he dies, like you said, he kills himself. And so that's the whole book. Mace does do there's a lot of death directly related to Mace Windu's actions. I can't say Mace Windu kills a lot of people, but it's one of the first times we've really seen a Jedi in books or even in the movies, I don't want to say be ambivalent to death because he's not. Mace is a very principled Jedi throughout this book, but just willing to accept that criminals making bad decisions is something he's not going to be able to stop, and he just accepts that they're going to die when they make bad decisions.
Right.
And so it's just a little bit of an interesting dynamic. So, we see that Mace continues to get closer with all of the people on the planet. He's talking with one of Chulok's advisors, and the guy's explaining that there is on this planet a formal duel that can be issued with people. And very conveniently, as they're talking about it, a sibling runs up and challenges him to a duel. This was one of the weaker parts of the book where I'm like, what? They literally are walking by an alley, and the guy pops out and is like, you killed my brother, time for a duel. I mean, it feels like in a Pokemon game where you're walking around and then a trainer sees you and you're forced into a battle. It's the exact same thing.
The alien that's showing him around, it was an assassin that Qui-Gon chased there.
Yes.
He's this big, furry, bug-eyed. What is that alien? You remember
Gregorian.
That?
Yeah.
He sounds scary.
Yes. Yeah, he does. So we see that Mace is getting to know everybody on this planet. One of the people is Vin Vin, who operates that cantina in the center of one of the layers, I think layer 4. And he also meets the droids, Maya 4, Maya 8, and Maya 12. And I really, really liked these characters.
Yeah, they are so cool.
It's these 3 droids who consider themselves sisters, and they have chips that they switch in and out of themselves that are all different kinds of personalities and abilities. And so
detective and information gatherer or something like that.
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
What was another one? I forgot. But
they have one where they fly. I don't know what that one was called. But
2 of the sisters are dancers, and Maya 12, I think, she's basically the information gatherer.
Yeah, exactly. She is smoking a pipe at one time. She's taking on an affectation. It was hilarious. It was really good. And what I'm imagining here is in the Force Unleashed games when you have Proxy and he takes on the hologram image of other people for you to fight, it feels the same with this droid,
Right.
the way it's described. Is she's like flicking in, and now she's this detective, and then she's some hardened criminal-looking woman, and then this and this and this. Really cool. Another really cool character we get introduced to around this time is Woollif, who is a moth-like alien, and he is a doctor and like cares about life.
Yeah, he was so cool.
Unparalleled. This dude is Mace Windu takes a liking to him really fast. He's like super moral, and he is basically, Star Wars doesn't have the Hippocratic Oath, obviously. The guy is like living the Hippocratic Oath. He just talks about how he'll serve anybody, you know, a slave master and the slave and this and that. He's just a good dude. He's a cool character. And so Mace is continuing to steep himself in this underworld culture. He leads a train heist where, you know, he's doing what Chulak asks, but he also kind of frames Chulak to thinking that he's getting screwed by the mayor of the city, who is in his back pocket. There's a lot of subterfuge here, and Mace Windu there's a lot of rapport building. It does a really good job of making Mace kind of have to work with everybody, talk to everyone. He's a wanted guy, and naturally, as this new solver comes into town and continues to solve problems, more and more people begin to be interested in Mace Windu.
And one thing I should mention is, as Mace Windu's going from place to place, he usually has a guide or something, and there'll be something that talks about how this whole place works. And it's all mushrooms, and the mushrooms are engineered to like give off light and this and that. And I forget exactly how Barnes put it, but Mace is able to pick up on like the science of how all these things work.
Right.
And that's where I'm saying the intelligence of Mace Windu. He's not just some beat stick. He's a guy who really knows what's going on.
Yes,
and is able to
absolutely.
perceive things that just your average doofus isn't going to do. Is just going to blunder or not even care about.
Right. So a core theme of this book is trust. Mace is having to establish trust with people he doesn't trust, like these criminals. He's having to earn the trust of the Sa'ad, who are very not trusting in the beginning. And it's a lot of him proving himself and kind of creatively taking what people ask him to do and solving problems for multiple people at the same time. He starts to develop a better rapport and relationship with the Sa'ad as he proves to them that he's a trustworthy guy, and he starts to develop a relationship with Kinshan, specifically their leader, to the point where he is inducted into their society as an honorary member of the Sa'ad, and Mace Windu talks about having to go through basically youngling trials, like he's there with the children to be inducted and to learn their way of life, and these beings have an understanding of the Force, and they call it the web. But their understanding of the Force is not like the Night Sisters or some other random Force, the Church of the Force, where it's like they recognize the Force but have like a different interpretation. These guys basically have the exact same interpretation as the Jedi. They just named it something different.
Right. It's like they discovered it long ago, and this is how they explained it.
Yeah, exactly. And they just know that everyone's connected through the living Force. So Mace gains their trust, becomes a member of the Sa'ad, and throughout this, since trust is such a theme in the book, Mace is really wrestling with a Jedi's place in the galaxy and his place in the Order. And we learn why he's struggling so much later on. He's plagued by nightmares. He can't get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And they're like intense nightmares. And he's been racked with them.
And as a result, his powers are diminished.
Yes, exactly. His connection to the Force at one point is really, really low. He's also talking about the concept of like taking orders from someone you don't trust and how you have to do that eventually, how that's like a soldier's dilemma, is that, you know, there's a certain level of where there's someone above you in the chain that is too far away for you to even really know, and they're still issuing orders that you just have to blind follow and hope that they have your best interest in mind. And this is just directly foreshadowing the Chancellor leading the Senate and the Jedi, and how the Jedi have to follow him. The war's in full throw. There's nothing they can do about it. And then as he gets closer to Chulak, we learn that Chulak is suspecting Mace of being a Jedi specifically because his mannerisms are very similar to Qui-Gon's. We get a good flashback chapter, Mace and Anakin, where Mace is teaching Anakin like a dumbed-down version of Vapad. And this chapter is gold, because it gives us a great interaction that dispels that myth that Mace Windu is just a jerk, that Mace Windu hates Anakin, or that he, is just a bad person. And it's Mace is right there talking about all this power he can see in Anakin, and how Vapod, you have to use your anger, and how really it seems like Mace and Anakin would be a really good fit, and if Mace could have, helped him harness that, but there's a lot of doubt there with Mace Windu for obvious reasons, and so it kind of balances his and Anakin's relationship by giving us that chapter. This book is also kind of a slice of life thing. We always talk about how much we like the slice of life. Well, you're with Mace Windu on this planet for like weeks. Like he's living on this planet.
Right.
We see day-to-day life for him, but he is pretending to just be a guy. And so we're seeing day-to-day life of how someone, an actual like mercenary, like one of the people in the background of Mos Eisley's Cantina, Mace Windu is living that guy's life.
Right.
And this is kind of the first time we ever get something like that. Because we saw Han's life in Solo. That's not the same thing. He's this main character that is not just how if you saw the people in the background of Mos Eisley's Cantina, you're like, how does that guy make ends meet? Yeah, how does he keep fuel in his spaceship? Well, what Mace Windu's doing is how that happens.
And there's so many details. Like he carves a iron shroom stick to hide his lightsaber in, and that's what he uses. That's part of his character. Instead of swinging a lightsaber around, he beats people up with this stick. It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Changes clothes. Has like Chulak invites him to live in the palace, but he also has another room down in the city. The palace is a floating palace.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the palace yet. There's a story that we get about Chulak tells Mace Windu this, or maybe it's the Gagarin character.
or
Someone
Vin.
tells him this,
Yeah.
that the palace was an overworld house owned by an exceptionally wealthy family, and when they came down underneath the surface, that Chulak bought it from them for $1. Because he can do whatever he wants. He's extorting these people, and then he forced them and thousands of other people to bring it down there brick by brick during the radiation storm. So he killed thousands of people to bring that house down there.
Yeah.
Really, really, like the guy's very sinister. They do a lot. They do a really good job with Chulak. So Chulak invites Mace to this fancy dinner, this gala. They go. I really
love
liked
this
it.
part.
Oh, it's a great scene because all the food that they're describing is Star Wars food, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, I want to try that.
We need to come up with. We need to like section out these and come up with display these on the Instagram page.
Exactly, analogs for it for sure. So Mace is like trying it, he's enjoying it, and he's talking to the chef, and he accidentally lets it slip. The chef kind of accidentally frames him when the chef's like, "Wow, you must have a really explored palate." And Mace Windu's supposed to be this, poor mercenary from the Outer Rim. He should not have a discerning palate, and he does. And so Mace Windu kind of panics right there. But the problem is quickly deflected by Mace Windu, because we learn that part of this dinner is Chulak sussing out Mace Windu to be the third member of their conjoined thing.
That's so strange.
That there's this like prophecy that 3 people will be able to join and become like God, basically. And I mean, look, the way that Chulak works, he's already pretty exceptional. You add Mace Windu to that, it would be crazy how formidable the 3 of those guys could be. Because there's a big concept of like, Chulak at this time has the potential to overthrow the Hutts in this part of space and eventually grow into a bigger criminal enterprise. And it's hard to imagine that, seeing Jabba the Hutt's power in Return of the Jedi, but Mace Windu attached, totally would be criminal over
force.
Oh yeah, their own section of the galaxy, Hutt space, Chulak space. So this all happens during that dinner scene, and then then Mace basically politely turns it down, and he doesn't exactly get that that's what's being offered right here, but he turns whatever promotion they're talking about down, and he learns later that that's what they were talking about. You can get it when you're reading it right there, that that's what they're talking about. But then we continue through the story, and you know what? We did miss one key part. Right before the dinner, Mace is suspected of being a Jedi. I mentioned that. Chulak sends him out in a spacecraft to go, scout the tunnels, and then he sends 2 people to try and kill him. They want to see if Mace has precog, if he can precog like a Jedi, and Mace is cunning enough to not be detected that is. And then they fully trust him. Like, this guy's not a Jedi.
Yep.
He's just an exceptional person.
Mace kills one of the guy with just some shenanigans. Has him fly through a waterfall. His shields are disabled. Shoots him and kills him. and Chulak kills the other guy with the remote detonator.
Remote detonation, which is a little mystery of the book, is how was that possible?
Yeah.
Like how in the world did that happen? And we learn later, it was not like a big sell. It was just interesting. I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
I didn't think anything of it. I thought Chulak could just have. He's that sadistic of a guy.
Right, just wired bombs and all of his stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they gave the line. They say, well, wouldn't so and so have seen a bomb in their deal? And I thought, to me, I was like, well, if it's under the hood, quote unquote. Like, what do you mean? Wouldn't he have seen it?
Well, I mean, exploding vehicles is a very old, tired mobster trope.
Yeah. It happens in the real world. It's not hard to make a car into a bomb. We've seen it a bunch of times in the real world. So it's not hard to do that. So the spaceship being that made total sense. But they have a decent explanation for it. It's a little more interesting.
I like how it's wrapped up later.
Yeah. So Maya 12 has been skulking around getting information from Mace, and then she's captured by Chulak's thugs because they want to know what she knows. And so Mace has to go and save her, and he does, but he's caught. And so now Chulak knows.
And he's revealed as a Jedi.
As a Jedi, exactly. There's a Jedi around. He's not to be trusted.
Tosses his lightsaber away. They capture Mace, and then as they're interrogating Mace, they're ready to kick off the gang war. It's time to make the move. Well, Mace triggers it. He says, he does. I was hired directly by your opposition.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
He did it on purpose. Because the whole time I'm sitting there listening to this book, it's like, how in the world is he going to solve the problems of this planet? One person is going to kill scores and scores of gangsters, you know? And so this was the mechanism of where it kicks off, and it's pit them against each other.
Yeah.
You know, a gangster civil war.
And then it gets even cooler with his strategy later during the war. So Chulak goes out to go kill Sybil, the leader of the siblings, and she's this giant, bug-like queen. She's got thousands of eggs, and she's got hundreds of children that are all, hive mind, basically.
They're all numbered.
They're all, exactly. The oldest is number 1. We don't meet number 1, but it's just that's how they're numbered. And so Chulak goes, kind of doesn't parlay with Sybil, but talks with Sybil, where he's like, you're going to die. We're going to kill you. There's no way we're not going to kill you. But, we'll spare your kids, yada, yada. And so Sybil's execution, pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it was.
Pretty wild. She is basically, she's this giant bug, and she's wrapped around her eggs, and they just take a flamethrower to her eggs. She starts screaming no, and then that Gagarin character just wastes her, puts like shot after shot into her chest, killing her.
Yeah.
It was, and they were like, and the book describes it as just a pile of meat on the floor afterwards.
Yeah.
So her children that are there, the living ones, see this, and something that Chulak did not take into account, and something I didn't take into account until as soon as I read it, is, oh yeah, this bug species is hermaphroditic. So the Sibyllin 4 just becomes the new queen.
Yeah.
He was a guy, and then in 10 days he's going to be the new queen, because bugs are like that in the real world.
Yeah.
And so it was a neat plot point that now there's just a new leader. Really, Chulak only killed the eggs. So
and while we're on the topic of her, just again, this is a level of detail in this book. Earlier in the book, Mace is talking to her, asking about. He's like, so how do you able to produce so many eggs? And she's like, oh, I had a lover several years ago who came by, and he gave me enough seed to last for decades.
Right. And then she ate his head.
Yeah, and then she ate his head. As bugs do. And so it's that level of depth of inquisitiveness from a character that gives information that ultimately is kind of useless to the book, but makes the slice of life, or the meta, as all the young people say.
Yeah.
The meta of this book just so, like I said, over the top enthralling. All the detail, and I'm really underselling it. So many different aspects of this have this level of nuance that make this book so awesome.
Well, like you said, I mean, Mace is an inquisitive character, and it's important that he's inquisitive, because you are, at times, you're like, why are they telling this? Like, there's multiple points in the story where you're like, well, this has to come up later, because it was just, Mace is just probing for information the whole book. It was really, really cool. Right. It was good. It makes a lot of sense. That's what they would be trained to do when they get to these planets. So we then, Mace is, black and blue. He's hurt. He's still trapped, and Woollif, the Mothman sneaks in and helps Mace disable the 2 guards that are over him and freeze him. Mace is like near death. He is very, very hurt. He is weak, and so they take Mace away and bring him to the Sa'ad to heal him again for the fight that's coming. Really like Black Panther scene. I mean, this is just straight out of the Black Panther movie. There's other tropes like this. It's the hero's real down and out, and he has to go through some kind of like spiritual transformation to come back and fight. It's like Aslan from Narnia.
Is this where he found out where the dreams were coming from?
Yes. So we get the dream scenes here. Mace has been having these nightmares.
Go ahead.
And he's been working with the Sa'ad to unlock these dreams, to kind of understand them and learn them. And through the process, they're like, the dreams are real. They're not reality, but like they're like lucid dreaming. Mace can do things in them. So he's like leaving a snack for his younger self to come and meet him and talk about these dreams.
In the past dreams, he was confronted by all the people he killed.
Yes.
And so it was like we said earlier, it's prompting these feelings to him that he's never confronted.
Yes. And so we learn that Mace's bad sleep and the dreams are the product of the mother worm. The spider worm queen is sentient, and she's been causing this. And we don't know yet how she's been causing it. We just learned she's been causing it. And so we get a few more flashback scenes through Mace. He's talking with his younger self. He's been having these dreams that his parents had abandoned him. And then, he knows that's not true, but he has to see it again. He sees his parents who apparently defended him from some bears.
It was causing us some self-doubt that his parents, he was always told that his parents had died when he was younger, but this doubt was, he felt diminishing his abilities because that creeping feeling that his parents gave him away.
Right. And that he didn't willfully choose the Jedi Order.
Right.
Which is, he was told he did, and that's not the case for every Jedi, but that's something every Jedi has to wrestle with, is that the Jedi Order, and Yoda says this at the end of the book, the Jedi Order has to be a revolving door. Like, you always have to be able to leave, because if not, then you are not free to choose, obviously. It's not a you're in it for life thing. It's, we see Dooku walk away, and he was a master of the Order. I mean, you have to be allowed to walk away at all times, because the Jedi aren't there to enslave you.
Right.
And so Mace is wrestling with that. Well, we get to see that resolution. His parents protected him from bears. And then the village comes together. And this was an awesome scene. Mace's selection into the Jedi Order is little baby Mace is put on a rug around the tribe. And so it's really vague, but it sounds like Mace Windu's from a pretty primitive planet. Because it talks about how his dad's like using spears.
Right.
And the elders refer to the Jedi as they came from the stars.
Right.
Like, it's just a couple lines here and there where you're like village elders and spears and things like that. Mace Windu came from a really primitive society.
And they talked about how unique he was, how he didn't cry when his parents were killed and all that.
Yeah.
Just, and it was other aspects too, just his capabilities as a baby even.
Yeah, exactly. And so they set him down on the ground and they tell him that he has to choose. They let him choose. It's a real Grogu situation where he can either crawl towards this like puzzle. I didn't really get that part. It is described as a puzzle. I don't know why. Anyway, you can crawl to this puzzle, or you can crawl to a lightsaber over there, and he crawls to the lightsaber and chooses the lightsaber. So baby Mace chose the Jedi Order, and it was just super cool. His little selection was really cool. So all of this is happening back to back in a couple chapters, and we're about to get the other one that was really stunned me that we got this, and I was like real bought in. I was very happy about this. We got a compelling Mace Windu love story in this book. He'd been slowly like falling in love with this Kinshan person. He had mentioned it multiple times, and then they kiss here. And that was something I never saw coming from hard-ass Mace Windu. By the book, rule-following Mace Windu. I did not expect to get the love story thing, but I really liked it. I was very impressed. I mean, this Kinshan is his Satine. Obi-Wan was sent to protect Satine on Mandalore. Mace Windu comes here and is working with Kinshan to protect her. And it's always a very, like, capable and powerful woman in these scenarios, because Satine is obviously this great politician, Padme is this great politician, Kinshan is the leader of her people. It's always this power couple between the Jedi and their leader.
Like minds joining.
Exactly. And so, then it comes hard and fast. There's a lot of revelations right here. We learn that the planet is alive. this whole planet,
like a mycelial network.
one giant organism. Exactly. Mushroom network. It is this giant fungi. The worms are super tapped into it because they eat it. The fungi is tapped into the force. It is the web, along with the web of the force outside of this planet. And this is how the worm could control Mace's dreams, was because it can tap into this network, and like everything is made of this.
Right.
The whole planet is constructed of the material that is this mycelium.
And so I think it even makes the case that whatever happens here is the will of the planet.
Yes, it does. It does make that case, because the planet is a sentient organism. So the gang war's raging. Mace is back in the fight. He rallies everybody, all the regular people, the Metagossans, the Sa'ad, to take the fight to the gangs. And what their plan is, I love this plan. It is super cool. Is this balanced guerrilla warfare tactic?
Yeah.
Where
Only fire from cover.
exactly only fire from cover. And if you're an average person and you see the siblings and Chulok gang going at it, side with the weaker side until it's equal, and then turn on the people you just sided with, and just always keep the fights equal so no one ever gets an advantage and they continue to just wear each other down. Awesome concept. Really liked it. We get a big giant clash. This was another one of those little points where I'm like, what? Like when they're walking past the hall and the guy challenges him to a duel. This is the other goofy point. This is a massive city. This is a metropolis. The battleground of choice for the two gangs ends up being the orphanage that is in the middle of town. And it was mentioned before that there was an orphanage, and then it's just like, yep, the fight's at the orphanage. And it's just like, why? Why did it have to be at the orphanage specifically? And so, Chulok comes in and threatens all these kids, and
The peril has to be really high.
exactly, yeah, they got to ratchet it up. And all the kids are saved. It's all good. Well, siblings and Chulok, they figure this out. They figure out that something's going on here with this guerrilla warfare over the next few chapters. And so they broker a peace between each other. And they then decide to go to war against what they're calling the rebels, which is just the regular people of this planet. And so they know that Mace Windu's the one behind this. He's the one leading it. They get a hold of Mace Windu, and they're like, you can leave the planet now. We won't kill you. We won't do anything. And he says, I just have 2 words for you, but there are children around. So good Samuel L. Jackson reference right there. I really was hoping that they'd sneak it in a little harder than that, but it was